Last week I was asking you to ask me questions about crochet or anything else. And I'm glad that I got quite a few questions, so I'm answering them now. Even though it's the end of September, we got a lovely day, so I decided to come outside. I'm in the town of Naantali, and I'm probably going to move around a bit because it's very blustery up here. I'm in this here thing, I don't know what you would call it. So let's jump right into the questions. What's the most ambitious crochet project you've ever attempted? There would be a number of those, but I think the most ambitious is being part of a group of 19 designers that created the Kalevala blanket. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I'm showing some photos of it. It was ambitious because none of us had done anything like that before in such a large group. The patterns ended up getting translated into, I think, 8 languages. So it was new for the designers, for most of the testers, for those who were editing the text in the patterns, photographs, all of that. But we were really proud that we finished it. It was for the year of Finland's 100 years of independence, and the organizers of the project got to meet the First Lady of Finland because of that. I'm a beginner and you have opened a whole new world for me, thank you. That's great to hear. How do I make borders around my work so it looks nicer and not so uneven? Lots of different ways, but I would say that first of all it would be important to learn to crochet so that the edges themselves are even, so that you don't, for instance, by accident skip stitches. Or I have some videos that talk about how to get edges straight in double crochets, but then if really it isn't even, then you can cover it up in a whole lot of different ways, and one of them is the crab stitch or a reverse single crochet, which is just a very tiny border that goes around it. But then you can put any kind of stitches around whatever it is you have made. I'd love to know if there are any currently popular motifs or patterns or stitches that originated in Finland. Currently not that I could think of. I mean, I mentioned that Kalevala blanket, it was very popular there a few years ago. There's more of that in knitting than crochet. So there are some traditional lace patterns in Finland that have spread around. And then there's like one designer called Molla Mills who has lots of books translated into a number of languages. So maybe something like that would be typical of Finland. Do you have your own internet shop where we can order yarns, hooks, etc.? And do you make videos yourself, or have you an assistant for the job? And is that a career or job that you have always wanted to do? The first part of this question, no, I don't sell any products. Sending physical things internationally has got harder recently, so I haven't even considered that. Yes, I make videos on my own and I don't have an assistant. At the moment, I don't even outsource any part of the work. I edit everything myself, film everything. Well, basically I do absolutely everything myself. Many YouTubers would outsource editing at a much earlier stage than where I am, but I actually love editing, so that's probably one of the last things that I would outsource. Is this a job that I have always wanted to do? Yes and no. Not exactly YouTubing, but something that combines crafts and any kind of work on computer, because I love both. I'm trained in textiles, actually loom weaving, and in the past I have also been sewing as my work, making wedding dresses, evening gowns and things like that. That was a long time ago. But then I ended up as a digital media teacher for 16 years, and I loved that too. So what I'm doing now is combining those two. So in that sense, yes, I am in my dream job. I would like to know how you weave in your ends when making granny squares of several colors. Yeah. I should do it better than I do at the moment. There is a better way and I haven't bothered learning it yet. So at the moment, until now, I weave them in each piece separately. There are videos about that teach you a better way, and maybe I'll learn that soon. I'm a new subscriber, so you may have disclosed this before, but I was wondering if you ever traveled outside of Finland. Thank you. Yes, I have both traveled and lived abroad quite a bit. I have lived altogether about 15 years in France and Belgium and Northern Ireland, and I travel every year several times when there's no pandemic. Like in my past videos earlier this year, 2 of them have been made outside in Las Palmas, Gran Canaria. Yeah, I love traveling, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do YouTube and crochet in general is that it's a job that can be done anywhere. So it's possible to travel and still continue working. Do you ever watch other crochet channels? What is your favorite thing to work on if you take a break from crochet? Yes, I do watch other channels a lot. You need to do that. I mean, this is my main job and I have to keep up to date. I watch them in different ways. Sometimes I use incognito so that what I have watched before doesn't affect what YouTube shows me. And allow YouTube to show you what's trending at the moment and what people watch. Favorite thing when I'm not crocheting? Well, I knit a lot. I enjoy that. And as I mentioned before, I like to travel, although I mean, you can knit and crochet while you travel. But I think spending time with family. I have 3 daughters and 5 grandchildren, so that's an important thing. And I like to watch things like British police series on TV or Netflix. I turned around so you can also see some of the harbor there. What was it like to learn to crochet in school? Is there anything you wish you learned earlier? I had learned the basics of crochet before I went to school, but then crochet at that time started right away on the first year of primary school, and all kinds of handwork continued right until you were 15. I loved to do that at school. I would often ask the teacher that if I could stay behind and finish something that I had done during the day. I have loved everything to do with, I have loved all kinds of handwork since I was a little girl. My father allowed me to also use things like knives, carving knives. So I even did that kind of work. When I was about 12, we had extra classes if you chose to. Yeah, so I enjoyed it. What I would have learned earlier, I actually did a video about that just recently there. 5 tips I wish I had known earlier, because most of the things about crochet that I wish I had known earlier are sort of tips that make crocheting easier or faster or more efficient or just more fun. So there are lots of things like that. And many of those things have started spreading only with internet. So when I was younger, there was no internet, so I didn't know. Is there a way to sew on a button that is easily removed so that you can wash the garment? I'm not really sure about this question because I can't possibly think of a reason why you would remove buttons before you wash something. Yeah, I'm sorry, I have no answer. Maybe somebody else knows. Yeah, for a reason to remove buttons. Maybe somebody knows. Do you have a favorite crochet technique to connect granny squares together? Yes, definitely. And that is joining as you go. So that you join the squares on the last round instead of first finishing them and then using whatever method to join them together. I like that sort of lacier look that there's no seam in between there. Do you think that the crocheters should do all kinds of projects, or is it better to specialize in some areas? And how do you take care of your neck and shoulders in order to prevent harm? It depends a bit on what you enjoy. So I would say that in general, yes, it's good to do as many different types as possible. But then there are some people who only enjoy certain types of crochet, say amigurumi or lace with thread or something like that. So the main thing is to do what you enjoy. If you would be talking about business and selling crochet or designing crochet, then it's better to specialize in certain areas, like in making hats or making cardigans or whatever. But you get a sort of a wider set of skills the more different types of projects you do. Neck and shoulders. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a medical personnel to really answer that, but important thing is to try to be as relaxed as you do as possible when you crochet, and find a kind of a way kind of method to crochet that no part of your hands or arms or anywhere would be tense when you crochet, so that you can be as relaxed as possible. And then also different types of exercises for your shoulders. I find that very, very important. I moved to a different part of the town now. This is the old town. Beautiful, very old wooden buildings. I really enjoy walking around in here. There's two people asked about the same. Why do you speak such excellent English? And then in Finnish, how and where did you learn to speak such good English? Thank you. There are many reasons. One of them is that languages are very important at school in Finland. When I was at school, I had English, Swedish, German and French. And all my English teachers were very strict about grammar and all that. So you had no choice but to learn. But then also I have studied in English. When I was 18, I moved to France to study in a bilingual college, English and French. So I'm also fluent in French. And my ex-husband is from Northern Ireland. So, and I have lived there for many years. And our home language for over 20 years was English. And all my daughters are fully bilingual. So those are all the reasons. Then two people asked if my daughters, children and grandchildren, if they crochet on it. No, unfortunately not one. My granddaughter, who's 14 now, she used to sew when she was smaller, and she has her own sewing machine, and we did projects together, but she's lost interest now. And of my three daughters, one would do things like paper crafts, otherwise they don't. But of course at school they had to, so actually anytime I have been moving, I have found quite a few unfinished colorwork socks and things like that they had to do at school but never finished. Does Finland do hygge? Are the northern lights visible most lights? What are the best parts of living in Finland? So hygge is a Norwegian and Danish word meaning sort of a home life, enjoying, taking it easy, slow living, all sorts of things like that. It's one of the trends in Finland as well, but not something that would come up very often, I think. About northern lights, no, they're not visible every night anywhere in Finland. And in the very south, I mean, I live in the southwest tip of Finland, and I think I have only seen them 3 times in my life, because I don't go up to Lapland. So Lapland, where you get many more of them, I don't actually know how often, but you do. It's over a day's drive up from here. Finland is quite a long country in the south and north direction. What are the best parts of living in Finland? I think safety in all areas of life. As one example, for instance, the society is built in such a way that it's expected that, for instance, that small children come and go to school on their own, and when they're finished they are at home until their parents come home. Just as I was walking here, I saw these 3 little girls walking home from school. So I thought that if I take a photo from the back, it's okay because they can't be recognized. Safety in general in life, so that you can trust that your life is okay. The whole society is structured in such a way. Free education right after university, almost free healthcare. Everybody gets 10 months of paid maternity leave, that sort of things. Childcare is heavily subsidized on the basis of your income, so nobody needs to stay home because they can't afford childcare. And grandmothers don't need to take time off work to look after their grandchildren. All sorts of things like that. That makes it safe. But many people would of course say about Finland that what they find the best is nature. And I love it too, especially in the summertime. I used to love ice and snow when I was a child, but I don't anymore. And I try to always stay away the 2 or 3 coldest months of the year. When it comes to making clothes, do you think crocheting together with sewing and knitting should be seen as a technical skill rather than a stereotype that it's for the mothers and grandmothers or simply for the ladies only? Yes, it definitely should be seen as that, and I would say that in many places it is actually seen like that. Certainly all crafts require a lot of technical skill. In crochet and knitting though, men can be noticed much more easily than women simply because there's much fewer of them. In Finland the good thing is that also boys need to learn to knit and crochet and sew at school. What do you think is better for beginners to make clothes with, knitting or crocheting? Not an easy question, but I would say crochet in the sense that it's easier because you only have one live stitch, while in knitting you have the whole round or row of live stitches and it's more likely that you drop them. But apart from that, either, because the important thing is that you enjoy it, so I would say that to try both and concentrate on which one you prefer. Are you a crocheter who always uses patterns, or do you like to freehand your stuff? Very definitely prefer to freehand. Any time of my life I have very rarely used patterns, even as a child. I started straight away of making them up myself, and it was important to learn to see how you construct things. I have used some patterns for knitting, like traditional Finnish gloves or mittens, but I'm trying to think if I have ever crocheted anything. Oh yes, I once made a toy rabbit using a pattern. But mostly I don't use patterns, but I do use technical tutorials to learn new stitches and techniques and things like that, but then I always construct my work myself and count the stitches and that sort of things. It's also important for me for anything like new stitch pattern that it's either a video or a graph. I mean, I just do not like written patterns. What is your favorite thing about making videos and your least favorite? It's hard to say what would be the favorite because there's that many. I like most of it. I love making videos the way I have been making them in the last number of months now, so that I go to different places and I talk instead of just showing my hands. Different cuts, different places, that sort of things, variation. But I also love making the samples that you need if I'm doing a stitch tutorial or tutorial of any sort. I love just to sit down and take the time to crochet those and watch TV at the same time. And I suppose most YouTubers would say the same, that the best thing is when you press publish. So you have finished the video. This clip is the next day. I love days like this when I have nothing to do all day except edit one video, except feed a cat. I'm cat sitting in my daughter's house. What I like least? Well, when something doesn't go right. For instance, when I forget something and I notice it the next day, so that I will have to do my hair and makeup specifically for maybe 2 sentences or something. So that sort of things are annoying, as well as some just practical things like tripping into all the wires that are trailing on the floor for lights and mics and that sort of thing. But overall I definitely enjoy it. When crocheting in the round, I get confused when counting stitches. How do you know if the chain counts as a stitch or not? That depends a bit on what stitches you are using. But if you're working on single crochets, then normally the chain doesn't count. But then if you are working like on double crochets, if you have a pattern, it should say if it counts or not. But if you don't have a pattern and you just going round and round, so it depends if you replace a double crochet using 3 chains. If you are not, and if you put them in the same place, you know, if you put the first double crochet in the same place where the chain is, then you normally don't count that. So unfortunately there's not just one answer to that question. What is your favorite crochet stitch? I actually just made a video that has that as a title. It's the V-stitch, the continuous V-stitch that goes sort of zigzag. I use that in basically everything. I'm linking that video in the description. By the way, anything that I have mentioned here, I'm also linking in the description. How long have you been crocheting? Over 50 years. Do you still find it hard to count stitches? No, not really. I don't think I ever have. Just have to remember that the stitch on the live stitch in a hook doesn't count. But apart from that, almost all stitches are, I find, are very clear. So you see where one ends and the next one starts. So if you have difficulty with that, I hope there's somebody who's explaining that, because I unfortunately don't have a video about that. I'm new to crocheting clothes. Is it possible to crochet top down a V-neck top? Absolutely everything is possible, definitely. It's just that some things require far more skills. If you were doing a V-neck top down, well, I have a V-neck here, so there would be two ways of doing it. Either that you would go back and forth, you know, so that you would leave the hole here until the V ends, or that you would use some sort of stitches that would form that. I had never done that, so I wouldn't know for sure, but I would do it so that I would first go back and forth and then only join it after the V has finished. What is your favorite beginner's project to recommend? Definitely a dishcloth or washcloth, or any kind of a cloth that's small and square. Then you get it finished quickly. You can use any kind of stitch. It doesn't really matter about counting the stitches at that stage yet. So yeah, that definitely. How do you measure sizing for clothing, or what's the best technique? Like I said in one of the earlier questions, I don't use patterns, and I'm not a sort of an exact kind of a person that I would think that one stitch here or there would matter. So I'm not actually the person to answer this question, because I'm in this group of European and British crochet designers, and we talk a lot on Zoom, and there are quite a few of there who talk a lot about this subject, and they talk all about grading, how you do clothes so that they are size inclusive, as small as possible and as big as possible. I myself, when I make clothes, whether it's for me or somebody else, what I like to do is take an existing piece of clothing of that person in the right size and shape, approximate shape. So for instance, if I'm making a sweater, I would have either a sweater or a sweatshirt or something, or big t-shirt or something of that person. Yeah, so here's again a question that I'm not the best one to answer. You have mentioned that you learned to crochet at school. Do they still teach crochet in Finnish schools? Yes, they do, although less than when I was at school, and less even when my daughters were at school in the 90s and 2000. They have cut down the amount of hours in the curriculum for sports and crafts and arts and music, but all of those are still in the curriculum for all children, yeah. And what has changed from the time when I was at school is that then the kind of crafts you did were divided according to your gender. Now everybody does everything. And then there's one question in Finnish. If I have a favorite online store to buy yarn, not really. I order it when I see something that I like. And nowadays, lots of countries have made it much harder to order from abroad with tax and customs and all that. So now I only order anything from either directly from Finland or any other EU country, so that I avoid customs and all sorts of problems with the posting. Do you have a tutorial for a circular jacket? Unfortunately not. Maybe one day I get to do that. I have done very few tutorials for clothes. One of the ones that I'm planning to do fairly soon is a sort of a basic crochet cardigan that you would do the way I explained, that you measure it to an existing garment, so you can do that easily on any size. But circular, unfortunately, not yet. That was all the questions. Thank you so much for asking. It was really fun answering them, so I will definitely do this again soon enough.